Why I left Islam? This is a question many ask those who decide to leave Islam. Why did you leave the religion? Often, the answer lies in fundamental issues within the religion itself. One of the most significant topics is Islam's view of women. In Islam, women are seen as secondary beings created to serve men and fulfill their desires. They are regarded as weak in intellect and faith, deficient in testimony, and lacking in rights. Even more troubling, there are religious texts that justify violence against women and demand their absolute obedience. Can such views be acceptable in an era that values equality and human dignity? 1. Islam and the deficiency of women's intellect and faith. One of the most well-known sayings in Islam is a hadith narrated by al-Bukhari: "I have not seen anyone more deficient in intelligence and religion than you, women, who can sway a resolute man away." This hadith clearly states that women are considered deficient in intellect and faith, diminishing their intellectual and spiritual worth compared to men. Furthermore, Islam restricts a woman's legal testimony, as the Quran says, "And if there are not two men, to bear witness, then a man and two women from those whom you accept as witnesses, so that if one of them errs, the other can remind her." Surah Al-Baqarah, 2:282. This verse reveals that a woman's testimony is considered half that of a man's, based on the assumption that her intellect or emotions might lead her astray. 2. Women as property and tools for sexual exploitation. In Islam, men are allowed to own women under the concept of ma malakat aymanukum, those whom your right hands possess, permitting the enslavement of women captured during wars and their use as concubines. The Quran states, "Except from their wives or those their right hands possess, for indeed, they will not be blamed." Surah Al-Mu'minun, 23:6. This text effectively sanctions the exploitation of women under the guise of religion. Additionally, Islam introduced temporary marriage, mut'a, allowing men to marry women for short periods, sometimes as brief as a few hours, in exchange for money. This practice is nothing more than legalized prostitution under a religious cover. Can such texts truly originate from a wise and just deity? 3. Child marriage, stolen childhoods. Islam permits the marriage of young girls, even before they reach puberty, as legitimized by traditions and practices. It is narrated that Prophet Muhammad married Aisha when she was 6 years old and consummated the marriage when she was 9. Today, such acts are considered crimes against childhood, yet they are religiously justified under Islamic law. Girls have no say in the decision to marry, as marriages are imposed by their guardians, whether a father or another male relative. Such practices reduce women to commodities traded without regard for their humanity or autonomy. 4. Denying women professional and economic independence. In Islam, a woman's primary role is confined to the household. She is not free to choose education or a career and is not allowed to open a business or become a doctor or an employee without the permission of her husband or male guardian. Even if she earns money, some traditions suggest that she does not have full control over it without her husband's approval. Religious texts and prophetic traditions reinforce this limited role for women, confining them to serving their husbands and raising children. Islam fails to recognize women's independence or grant them the right to make decisions about their lives. 5. Women as inferior beings and tools of obedience. Islamic texts portray women as inferior beings. The well-known hadith states, "I have not seen anyone more deficient in intelligence and religion than you, women, who can sway a resolute man away." Additionally, Islam legitimizes the physical disciplining of women for disobedience, as stated in the Quran, "But those, wives, from whom you fear arrogance, first, advise them, then if they persist, forsake them in bed, and, finally, strike them." Surah An-Nisa, 4:34. Such verses grant men absolute authority over women, even allowing violence to enforce obedience. 6. Women as objects of trade in marriage. Islam also allows the concept of women being bought through marriage practices like milk al-yamin and temporary marriages. Furthermore, girls can be married off at extremely young ages, even as young as 5 years old or younger, with no say in the matter. Their marriages are arranged by male guardians, robbing them of their right to choose their life partner or even the timing of their marriage. Is this religion truly from a wise and just God? When examining these teachings collectively, it becomes evident that they reflect a patriarchal mindset designed to control and exploit women rather than honor or uplift them. Islam does not present a just vision for women, instead, it treats them as possessions of men and tools for their service. These texts and practices raise significant doubts about the divine origin of this religion. Could such teachings truly come from a wise and just God, or are they the product of a male-dominated society from 1,400 years ago? Conclusion: women in Islam are victims of a religious and cultural system that places them beneath men. These practices stand in stark contrast to modern principles of justice and equality. For this reason, after deep reflection on these issues, I decided to leave Islam. My aim is not to attack believers but to open a space for dialogue and rational discussion in the pursuit of truth. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Let's discuss this issue with logic and respect.